It's another episode of the Better Learning Podcast. I am excited about our guests today because we talk a lot about furniture and use, and we can talk about it from like the designers and from the architects and what we do supporting education from the outside. But it's always good to get the perspective of the principals and the ones that are actually like using the spaces and hearing from the teachers and the students and being able to have that lens to it. So I'm excited to bring in Dr. David Cupolo. I screwed it up, didn't I? Did I announce it? Did I pronounce it
It's
the right way?
Cupolo, but it's okay.
Cupola. All right, Cupola.
It's all good.
Yep, and he's a principal at St. James Intermediate School in Horry County in South Carolina.
Yes,
So,
sir.
all right, okay. I'm always, whenever, so just for the audience, because I'll give you a little behind the scenes. I'm horrible at pronunciation and making sure I do it. And whenever I get it stuck in my head, it's so like it is so hard to switch it. So,
It's why I don't read names at award ceremonies
oh, I know.
because I'll get it stuck and I'm afraid I'm going to mess up and I'm not
Oh,
the expert of that.
yeah, I'm the
Yeah,
worst. I'm like, give me a script and I'll screw it up. So,
yeah, yeah.
but I really wanted to talk about talk from your perspective of where you got to what you're talking about, like the thrill and getting rid of the boredom. But I want to start really from the very beginning for you, and I want to hear what was school like for you.
So, I knew how to play the game. I knew how to be successful in school. And honestly, if I had a relationship and you built curiosity and made connection with me, it was an A. If you did not, I was a B for bye-bye, that type of thing. And C for see you later. It all depended, and came from a family of engineers, and I chose to go into public teaching and education, which is great. But I think I was not that curiosity and connection for me and learning was not built in the area of math. It was just too much of that skill and drill. And but I played it well, went on to college, University of New Hampshire, and then a few master's degree at NC State. And I that's where I really learned how to learn.
So talk about that learning to learn. What sparked that for you?
I think it was again, professors who allowed me to have that agency and explore the interests that I had. They gave the structural framework, but you really had to go do the work yourself and, find those connections and challenge you. And I think there's the principle of Goldilocks, right? That Goldilocks effect. And I think that had the right enough challenge and also the right enough support, but also the right enough freedom to, take my learning further,
Yeah.
and kind of push me.
Okay. All right. So you usually when I talk to administrators, school leaders, and there's like the big transition moments. There's the first one be like making that decision. Hey, I want to go into education, and then that typically puts them in a classroom. And then there's that second moment where they're like, you know what? I think I want to be outside of the classroom. I can have a different impact as an administrator. What were those moments like for you?
So, yeah, so I came into education teaching alternatively. I was not certified. I was working for a adolescents coping with transition program in Rhode Island, and the police referred it to something causing trouble. They had a different A, but these were kids who just needed some more guidance, right? And so I found out there was a lot of jobs teaching in North Carolina. So I moved down, taught special ed, and it was interesting. My boss at the time said, "You're a middle school teacher. I won't give you a recommendation for anywhere." He goes, "You connect with those kids," and I did it. And in that time frame, I quickly realized I want to have bigger impact. And I realized I could. I think the students taught me so much that I realized, wow, what they're teaching me, I need to share and need to use to impact other kids in other classrooms. So administratively, and you always have that principal that I think says, "Hey, you should go and be an administrator." And I had a couple of those who did that, and lo and behold, quickly moved into assistant principal roles, and now I'm in my going to year 19 as a principal.
19 years. That's awesome. First, thank you. Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
we're recording right now at the beginning of August, even though it won't release until later, but you're getting ready for the next round of teacher students coming through. What what's going through your mind right now?
So teachers come back on Thursday, and again, I'm like that teacher the first night night before the first day of school. You have those jitters, but you're excited. I'm excited to see what the year can bring. At my school, we're grades 5, 6, so we'll have a new group of fifth grade students coming in, and getting to know those students and seeing what impact we can have on them, and setting that foundation and framework for. I go back to the student is the most important part of this building. Without them, we would not be here. And this year we're kind of kicking off and be the one, and how can you be the one? I ended the school year with, saying I'm going to reflect on how can I be the person I want to work with?
I love
And
that.
then this year, so now it's kind of tying it up that we're coming back. How can I be the one I want to work with and be the one for those students? So kind of wrap my head around those thoughts and gear up.
Yeah, so is it pretty typical every year you're coming in with like a new theme and a new direction that you really want to build in throughout the culture?
So yeah, I think yes and no. I always try to tie it in what we've always done. And we always revisit the vision. We always revisit our beliefs. And going back to this is what we believe, and that is it, that we can be the one for those students and all students. When I say all, capital A, capital L, capital L, even the kid from that neighborhood, as Ken Williams would say, they deserve the best. And, they know that. And I have an amazing staff that go in every day and give it all for those kids. But, just kind of tying it all together as we keep going along and just improving.
All right. So talk more about kind of how you got this interest and at what point did you recognize how much the learning environment was really impacting the work that you do with that idea of like school is there for the kids.
Yeah. So, as I moved in my career, one of my dreams was I realized I wanted to open up a new school, and that'd be a cool thing to do. And I actually only was in my second year in this Horry County. I'd been a principal in North Carolina, and I figured it might not come along because I've only been at this the school I was at short period, and they selected me to open up this school, which is a different design model. There was only a few others in the state, but it was a state of the art facility, and it's um, net zero, net positive energy, and it looks like a mall, literally glass walls on the inside, collaboration spaces. But there was no schools like it. We visited some different models to see what it was like. And every time you go to school, I want to talk to the kids. I can do the tour with the adults, and I can see. And one student, I can remember the school I said, so how does this work with the glass and everything? I'm an ADHD adult. How does it work? And they said, it's like the zoo effect. I said, what's that? They said, I see you, you see me, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm like an animal in the zoo. You're watching me and I'm in my element. I said, that is awesome. I said, okay, this will work. But I remember, and we entered the school, we got the keys on a Friday night. Teachers were coming back that Monday morning, and my whole staff had never ever come together. And so we hadn't even been in the building. But I remember visiting while it was dirt. I bought a hard hat, scraped it up, a vest, and a clipboard, and I went in like I was part of the construction crew just to see, this process. And finally, I figured out who I was for meetings. Um, but trying to envision what this could be for kids and what environment we could create, because you can have beautiful buildings and be an ugly culture, right? So what can we really create for kids? And every parent meeting, I would start off with schools are built for kids. This is their place. This is not our place. We serve them. And so it was great. And coming into the building and really trying the collaboration spaces. So our first day back with teachers, um, I had my people spread out in the building doing different small PD sessions to see the acoustics, to see how it worked. And with teachers, I said you can use the collaboration spaces. I didn't say there were rules to it, but I did say is let's let kids rise to the challenge.
And
You know,
so, yeah, for sure. So I just want to set the stage a little bit. So that school opened about 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Okay. So 2016, definitely, because so many people that are listeners of the show are involved with the design of schools. And that was definitely on the earlier side, because what you're describing is pretty much I don't want to say the standard. Hopefully it's at least
Right.
more closely aligned with that versus the traditional model that, that doesn't allow that flexibility and that collaboration. So you guys are going in. How involved were you in the process, or was that coming from the district level? Like who was really driving that vision of saying, hey, we're gonna build this new school. We have this opportunity of a lifetime. How, what what was that like for you from
So
your
that
perspective?
I came on the back end, and it was more the, decision making. And I really think that net positive really was a big key for the school board, and the design and the potential. So I don't know the conversations that we had about what pedagogy, what we could do with in the classroom. I did help pick out desks and make sure the sizes were right for what we needed, and chairs. Um, but as far as, how do you use it? It wasn't there, it really wasn't. And that was my experience. And so kind of fumbled through it with our staff, but more or less talking to kids and seeing how teachers were using it and kids. And I remember the first teacher that sent kids out to work in the collaboration space. I'm like, wow, how's it going? She goes, I don't know. I go, well, let's see. And I fist bumped her, and then the glass, I said, it's writable. I didn't say you had to use it. I didn't say you couldn't. I said it's writable. As teachers started really using it, that's the fourth teacher, second, third teacher in the room using that. Students love working out those problems on the glass, or, anchor charts on the glass. And it was just kind of working with teachers and seeing how students are responding, and conversations with students. I wish I had more on the front end I could speak to. I think now I offer a whole lot more to be able to
Yeah.
say, hey, this is how we evolve.
Well, that's why I wanted you to go through that because that's very typical in this industry. Very typical in that there was a decision made, at the district level or someone on the board or somebody said, "Hey, we're going to go this direction," but they're not always pulling in kind of the site leaders and teachers, students' perspective as they're doing that. Now, as an industry, we're getting better at doing that earlier on, but your experience is like very typical where you're almost like handed a building and now saying, go figure out how to use it.
Yeah. Friday night at 7:20, I got the key. Teachers show up on Monday. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely embraced it, hearing like that, and you had teachers that doing. Were there ones that fought it, or saying like, man, I just wish I had my old space back?
There were some, there was a couple, and and they may have realized it wasn't necessarily their fit. Um, but I remember one teacher who is interesting because this school's meant for older students and not these students. And I'm like, but look, they're doing it over there. And finally, it took a little while, and she embraced it. And she actually retired, but said, "Thank you for giving me my last 2 years was so enjoyable with my kids, and because of the what we have here and what we're able to do, and the way the building's being used in those spaces." So that was pretty cool testament for her, who was, it was a shift.
Yeah, yeah, which I don't blame anyone. Change is
I,
hard. I mean, if you've been doing something for a long time one way and then have to shift that quickly to a different way, that's a tough change.
it really was. It really was. And I'm a research person. I'm a research geek. I've known John Hattie's visible learning work for years, and those in education. If you don't know him, you better know him, because what he writes about and the research he has people do, it's what works in schools. So that was part of that other foundation was, teachers necessarily don't want to know about the research right away, but kind of bringing it in and introducing them. Okay, well, here's what the research says about student discussion and the impact. And here's cooperative learning. And here's how we can use the furniture and how to tweak it and better practice and tighten it up. And trying to take that learning to another deeper level
Do
for
you
students.
do you mind talking through a little bit of Hattie's research? Because it is important for us to understand the research behind, because a lot of us who are supporting it who may not come from education background, whether it's on the architecture side or on the industry supporting education, the more educated we could be, the better.
Right. And I think one of some of my favorite conversations of people in the industry in architecture, in outfitters because of that, and so again, that research out there shows what's effective. Homework has little impact on student growth and academic success. Um, Class size, we learned during COVID it might be different if you have hybrid, but you had to do some other things well for it to be impactful, right? And that's the piece. Just you have to learn the strategies and the research behind it. But yeah, so he and Greg Donahue proposed a conceptual learning model, Skill, Will, Thrill, which was a synthesis of that research and visible learning of what worked. And oftentimes we surface deeper transfer, right? And we know in classrooms there's surface level learning and kids aren't engaged and we sit in rows, and there's that boredom piece that I found, and Cornwell in 2000, it was only 2 years ago, the article only 2 years ago, and how boredom has led to what, a third of high school dropouts to half. That's an issue. That's a crisis. And that's something we can fix. And that's where design and use, just because you put the desks together doesn't mean they're going to collaborate, right? You got to use it effectively. But that's that research. So I want to study what learning thrill was. It seemed like it just rhymed with skill and will, and it was perfect. So nobody had studied it, so I kind of talked to South Carolina instructional leaders, and how do you perceive and conceptualize it? Then what does it look like? What does it sound like in the classroom? Take me to those places, describe it. And they described these deep, engaging experiences for kids. They were collaborating, they were experiencing almost, student agency. They were driving their learning. The teachers were just, fostering that real environment for those students. But again, inductive learning, project-based learning, and, thinking about how we design and materials and use of materials and how, because teachers, it's about time, right? That's Adam and Eve's teacher said, I don't have enough time to plan for them. It's just the way it is in education. We know that. So what can we do to help those teachers, design rooms and make smoother transitions and furniture that's flexible so I can just easily maneuver it, so I can do this over here. But then, those learning spaces for students, what are they comfortable? Where are they more comfortable in taking their learning to a deeper level and really getting that thrill experience, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Do you mind giving some examples of like where, because the space, how much that changes, like those concrete examples, I think are the stories are always good for people to hear, to be like, hey, this is a kid that maybe 10 year, in your first 10 years of being a principal may have had a different experience versus now what they have in that flexible learning environment that they're in now.
Sure. Yeah, I remember when we opened, and it was a few weeks into the school year, and this really hit me, this moment. Um, so under the stairs is cement blocks in my school, and there's a sprinkler system, and there was a student who'd like to work under there. But one day he's kind of just hanging on the pole, not thinking, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, what do you mean? I said, you're pulling on the fire thing, sprinkler system. I go, do you know what happens if that breaks? And he goes, no. I go, neither do I, but I have a feeling it has a lot of water, a big bill, and fire trucks. I go to your room. He goes, do I have to? And I was like, oh my, I sound like a parent. I'm like, tell you what, go for 50 seconds, just come back. Please don't do that again. We good? He's good. I said, we fist bumped. But then I started like, wow, I need to pay more attention to this, and those students. And students tell you, this is my space that I feel more comfortable on the floor in the corner on that pillow. Or, our media center is open space and there's different furniture. And, you struggle with custodian on whose furniture it was. Well, they're putting their feet on it. I go, it's theirs. Like, that's their space. This is where they're comfortable learning. And it was transferring. Those teachers are like, wow. And that they rose to those occasions. I've seen students who come to that school with behavioral records. And part of that culture is that this is your place, this is your space, and it's a safe space. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation last Friday with one of my teachers, last Thursday. She talked about the desk. how each kid doesn't own that desk. Remember how we had our desk and you had your name on it?
Yeah,
It's
for
not,
sure.
it's not my desk. It's our area. And I can go work with other kids in another area. And students who might not sit in that row traditionally can work together with other students in that respect and that safe place and that safe space that they need,
Yeah.
and allowing them that opportunity. And I think that's the other key, is that setup that we've seen from non-traditional roles to um, collaboration, and even with the technology of sharing through Google Chromebooks and Google Docs and things of that nature.
Yeah. So so can you expand on that more as a principal who has gone through that process and now to a principal who may be getting ready to open a new school or a totally different space and their staff is coming back right now or they're in the process and it's going to be in the next 6 to 12 months. What are those lesson learned? What would be that advice that you would give to them? Because they're going to have those same things. They're going to have the teachers that are going to be like, well, what do you mean the student doesn't own the space? What do you mean that like I'm not up front and and things aren't sitting in straight rows? What are those things that you would share with others?
I start with the why. That's when we opened the school. I got a book for the staff to go back to our why. And we had our individual, why are you teaching? Because I knew teachers were going to struggle. I knew just because you got the keys doesn't mean it's complete, right? Let's be honest, there's still going to
Yeah,
be work being done. And those can interfere, and things aren't the air conditioning, right? It's just going to get adjusted. And those are things that matter to teachers. And all the pressure on teachers now. So really looking at the why and the student, and then what can you do for the student? And because everybody got an education to help kids, to work with kids and
yeah,
help kids be successful. I think that's the first piece, is try to build that collective vision. I started with collective teacher efficacy, has the biggest research effect size on student achievement, 1.36. And coming together, really looking at involving teachers in that process. And then, setting up some structures. You got to have some structures, but don't be completely tied to them, because you got to get to know the environment, and allow teachers to mess up, allow kids to mess up.
which is
That's
yeah, which we all know is the best way to learn, but we we struggle. We want to
yeah,
step
yeah.
in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, are there as somebody who values research and is constantly looking at that, what research do you wish would be done at this point? What would be really helpful for you, or what are the questions that you would want to try to answer?
I talk to kids a lot, and it's one of the tough parts for researchers is doing research, talking to students, right? Because that's that big. There's always those ethic things in there, and you know, I I started with the check-in system with the company in Australia, Virtual Learning, and one of the things I want to know is, what are you learning today? I ask kids, what are they learning? Yeah, you ask your kid at home, what you learned today? Nothing. Or this. Well, I know what you did, but what are you really learning? And I found that students couldn't really articulate. And then teachers like, well, you talk to so and so, of course they couldn't tell you. Well, I don't know that that was the answer. So we started looking at that, and one of the things we found is students were bored, but they also weren't clear about what their learning was. But they also wanted discussion. They wanted to talk to their peers, and they wanted to collaborate. They were telling us what they wanted through that check-in. John Hattie actually, it's a quote that says on their site, it's the best classroom data I've ever seen. And really, I would love to learn more about students, what leads to thrill for them and how they experience that in learning, because it's not often. You go to watch schools when it gets out of high school practice, right? Kids are practicing skills, they're acquiring skills, they're consolidating it, they're adding their learning, their dispositions, persevering, and then there's that thrill. And we see in band when they get to perform in chorus. And very rarely do we get to see in those academic classrooms, but it can exist, and that's what I've kind of studied. But I want to know more from students of, what can we do to help you? What can the environment do to help you? What do you need more of? We kind of know some of it, like I said, from that check-in. And it was, we want to be able to just have more discussion. We want to be able to ask more questions. We want to be able to explore. We want to be able to collaborate, you know. So those things, I would love to delve more into that research and study the environment they're in.
Yeah.
And
What does your gut tell you if you're going to have a hypothesis on that of saying like you know what, I think this would work, or you know like this would be a benefit.
I think those flexible environments and collaborative spaces where students feel safe and they feel valued and they have agency, and where you give them opportunities for curiosity and connections to each other, I think that they're going to say, that's what I want. That's what
Yeah.
I need. And that's the world of today, honestly, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, as you see the research, you go through school, and by the time you become a senior, you're very little engaged, and it's
Yeah.
scary,
I know.
you know.
I know.
And you could be like, we can all be engaged in something, and it can be low level too, right? I've been engaged, but that's really tasks. I'm just completing a task. I'm not really
Right.
into it. So, what, you know, and part of it's a curricular issue on the educator side, you know,
Yep.
that's part of that's that curriculum. We got those tests and all of those things, and I'm not saying there's not some value there. Um, but our learning's not going deep enough, and we need to be able to transfer that learning, you
Yeah.
know?
I think you're right. I mean, my experience would be the same, that if I was gonna say like I maybe there's not perfect research that shows it this way, but my gut and from what I've seen, from being around this enough and just knowing kids and watching it through is you're right. They do. They want the agency. They want to be able to collaborate. They want to work with their peers. They want to have meaningful projects. Uh,
Yeah,
and that, yeah, and that for me is always the hard part because I'm the one that wants to challenge the status quo and be like, well, if you know that, why don't we start doing that?
right.
Like what's preventing us from doing that? And I get it. There are a lot of limitations and of what we can do without having the data and without having, you know, like the laws and all the legal and all the things that are coming down from state level and district level. But my gut is with you on that too, is that if we actually listen to the kids, they know what they want.
Yeah. Oh, they do. They do, you know, and um I was glad I had a professor said study thrill, nobody studied it, you know, because that's
Yeah.
tough to do a dissertation when there's no prior research, you know, on that one topic. So you know, but I was it really knew I was onto something there. So, you know, developing a framework for instructional leaders and how can we work with teachers to increase learning thrill, you know, that's kind of still tweaking it. Because I believe it can be done even in the status quo, but we do have to push those
Yeah.
understandings, you know,
Yeah.
um, and trust kids, you
Yeah.
know, because they'll respond right, you know, and they're gonna mess up. All did. Look,
Yeah. And it's all right. And that's probably the best thing for them is to mess
that
up, right?
I sat in the principal's office a
Uh,
couple of times in my life. It's nothing wrong with that, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So are you, so as far as like studying thrill, like, and so are you actively engaged in that? Like what, because I talk through like what your journey's been around this concept of thrill in education.
So right now, you know, finalizing my dissertation and kind of working with again versatile learning. Phil Stubbs is my thought partner. Shout out to Phil. He's with versatile learning. He's a brilliant mind. In kind of really fine tuning a framework for instruction leaders to kind of look at those things. Inductive learning. So what does the environment look like? Teacher clarity. They've got a tool, Clarify Ed, that they're really tweaking right now. That's coming out, and it's been a great journey. That'll take time, give teachers back time and make things more clear for students, but also look at a learning progression. So it's kind of like expert to Jedi, you know, so students can see this is where I need to head with my learning. And if I want to be at thrill and I want to be at transfer, this is where it's at. But then giving them the opportunity to say, this is how I can show and meet success criteria, you know, instead of just answering questions on a test, show me how you can, this is the level, show me that you are at that level, you
Yeah.
know. And that was a neat piece when kids could articulate with 3 points of what they were learning and where they were going, they had 68% more positive emotions responses, just that one factor.
Yeah.
So I worked with my staff on that, and we found, wow, the boredom, when you look those wordles, bored got smaller and smaller and smaller, and excited and enthusiastic, and anxious reduced. There wasn't that cognitive overload that kids feel. So there's a lot there that we're, working on writing and um, getting out there trying to share that message and do some presentations and all those things.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Well, that people need to hear it. Yeah. People
Well,
need to hear
thank
it and be
you.
able to do that. So yeah. Thank you for doing that work. I want to hear before we wrap up here. I want to hear so the 8 year journey into the new facility. What are the things that you have changed, or like if you did it over again, you wish it would the building would be different or the learning environment be different for those people who are going through it right now, because that's obviously one of the big benefits of education is we're so willing to share and help people so that the next project is always better for the kids and the teachers in the future.
So, for me, it was interesting right now, the struggle is furniture. So we have these, funky shaped collaboration tables for kids can sit at. And I have group teachers that would prefer those in their classroom than the desks that connect together. Just basically, they're four desks that have a cool little shape that connect together. They want these tables, and they say it's more functional. I more space in my room to maneuver. It's still not their desk. It's our table in that mindset. That's something to look at, because they really believe it's helped their classroom. Um, and I think just kind of looking at the spaces and how do you use them, and what structure do you provide kids for? Like it's for this use, using it understood that it's for learning, that it's not just, hanging out. And kids did a great job with that, but that's just a little suggestion, keep reminding this is our space for this, and really have an understand this is where you apply yourself. This is where your collaborative place. This is for your discussion. Because we didn't have that. Campfires was not a word when
Mhm.
I came out. We did cooperative learning structures. I think that's a great training to have, Kagan cooperative learning structures, because it really tightens up how to so kids can't hide in those environments still, because that's another piece. We don't, and I don't mean physically hide, but I do, educationally hide. I was good at that. I could sit in the back right corner, last seat if I could, and just, kind of do my thing and then do what I needed to do to get out of class.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, if my best advice, I could have a plan, have a vision, have a group of people, your people who you believe will be the key people to really move that transition. And look at the space, and then I would love to visit schools and say, hey, this is your space, this is how it worked for us, this is how it didn't, this is the space that was designed in the school that we don't use, that I wish was something else, right? And that's the
Exactly.
that's the architecture side. When I was going through my ed specialist degree, because I didn't understand how architects design schools, so part of my internship hours were with the architecture, because I want to know why did you do that? Why did you put this there? And then, look, those transitions, that's going to be an issue right here. Student transitions, that's, you need to think about that, because that's cross paths. Um, that's something else I would say. Look at your schedule and look at where kids are maneuvering based on the design. We have crisscross applesauce traffic, and it can be kids are kids.
Mhm.
We don't necessarily want to quiet, but we just want, get where you need to be. Hug and go, hug and go, hug and go,
Yeah.
especially after COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And whether it is that wayfinding or something on the floors to help guide that
Exactly.
traffic flow. Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks for doing that. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else that I should be asking you that I haven't asked you about that you think would be useful for our audience?
I just think having educators and principals at the table. I don't know the conversation they had. It seems like it's getting better. But understanding pedagogy, understand research. I've presented at a couple of A4LE conferences, and I enjoyed them. And it was, sharing the research and the pedagogy to understand this is how it's used in the classroom. This is how the teacher will use it, and this is why. And this is the research says this is effective. I think that knowledge would be beneficial. Oh, okay, this is why we want students to discuss. This is why we want cooperative learning. This is the impact it has. And one of the activities I do is I put up some of the effects, things that impact learning. It can have a strong effect or very little. And it's always interesting that items that come up, like homework, that very little impact. But we all hop on our kids about it. Like, you got to get your
Yeah.
homework done.
I
When
know.
it really doesn't have impact,
I know.
unless it's really taking learn further, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Yeah, th
and
those are the things that are like, oh, we've heard this research for so long and we know it, but man, I can tell you from like the parent experience, our schools are not learning that. They
right.
keep sending the homework home, and it's still like that nightly battle of, and then I'm sitting here knowing this research that the homework really doesn't matter.
I live it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
I live it in my house, and now we know more about digitalized content and personalized learning, which is better. I think research will help tweak that homework effect size a little bit more. Um, because it's more meaningful to students if it's used the right way. They understand this is where you fill in your gap and this is how it's going to benefit you. But yeah, no, it's frustrating to know we know the right stuff and we still struggle getting it in place.
Yeah, well, I just heard a story of Chick-fil-A, how and it seems like recently they've dropped this, at least once by us, but they used to have you knew if you went to a Chick-fil-A and they would say, "How may I serve you today?" Um, and you knew that was the way. And they asked them like, how long did it take to get that idea, that simple line of having everyone ask about that? Or I think it's the end of it, like when they say my pleasure, like when instead of saying thank you or yeah, they'll say my pleasure. How long did it take to get everyone in the organization to do that? Guess how long they said it took them?
Years.
6 years.
Wow.
6 years to get like
Wow.
everyone to just say that one, my pleasure, like just to answer like that my pleasure. And it's a reminder of like how long it takes to get even simple changes all the way through a system. And yeah, to do it, we may know the research, but man, it takes a long time, unfortunately, as much as we want to try to have that urgency to saying like, hey, this kid only goes through school one time. Let's try to get it
Right.
right for them.
Well, and that's, and for me, it's gentle, constant pressure because compliance, I'm one of those, the status quo doesn't always work for me. But that gentle, constant pressure of what works, hey, try this, um, it takes hold, but it takes time. You got to have that patience to realize, and organizations go through those challenges, and you kind of peak excitement and then dip down and then, all right, let's get back on track again, but it does. I didn't think 6 years though, to say my
Yeah.
pleasure. That's a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time. Two
yeah.
words.
All
Man.
right. Well, thank you for your time. To the listeners, if
Oh,
you
my pleasure.
yeah, see, there you go. Perfect. It didn't take us 6 years to get to that point there.
And I
But
meant that too. Yeah, no pun.
for yeah, for the listeners, wherever you listen, just hit subscribe. We appreciate it. We also appreciate all of the feedback and the recommendations on either guests or topics. The hub for everything is betterlearningpodcast.com, and on there we'll have show notes. We'll have links to David's information, and he shared with an article. We'll link to the article too that he wrote here. So if you want any more information around this topic, but David, really appreciate the time. It was great speaking with you.
Yeah, too.
The views and opinions expressed on the Better Learning Podcast are those of myself as an individual and my guests, and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for, the Association for Learning Environments, K-12, Education Leaders Organization, or Second Class Foundation.